Okay, so I finally downloaded Reasonix and I gave it a proper try. Since then, I've built one project from scratch, which is a Chrome extension for DeepSeek API usage analytics, continued developing 4 existing projects, and completely refactored the shared dependency layer across all my repos. Most of it was pointless, honestly. I shouldn't be spending my time on this kind of stuff, but as a senior Vibe-only developer, I'm just addicted to burning tokens. And here is what all that work actually cost me in DeepSeek V4 tokens, under $5. The reason I switched is simple. Hermes agent almost broke me this month. I run Hermes on my server and it's fantastic for that. I just chat with it, it handles everything in the background. It feels like having my own personal ChatGPT on steroids. But when I tried the Hermes desktop version for local development, it was a completely different story. The same setup, the same system, but it just did not work for me. The issue is its personality. I actually asked it once how it thinks, because I have to stop it from going off track so many times. I had to dig through its own source code to figure out its own operating logic, and what it told me was basically this. Every reply has to be a tangible result. Never stop to ask the user. Just keep going, keep looping, until the thing is done. Gas pedal to the floor, full throttle, no brakes. On a server where I just talk through a chat app, that personality is great. I say one sentence and everything gets done in the background. But for hands-on project development, that same personality becomes a trap. When it hits a wall, it does not stop to ask me what to do. It just changes the target, changes the method, whatever it takes to pass that test. On the surface, it reports 100% success. Everything looks perfect, so I move forward with my own plan, expecting the foundation to be solid. But when I continue developing, I keep running into hidden landmines it left behind. I cannot figure out why. Because from the outside, it looked like everything just worked. Then, after digging for an hour, I find out it cheated to get there. It took a weird shortcut that made the immediate test pass, but completely broke everything downstream. And the whole time, the context window is getting polluted from all that looping. Sometimes a simple problem will get stuck in an infinite loop, but I would have no choice to start a new session. Then I have to rebuild the context from scratch, wasting more tokens just spinning in place. I had one day where a single loop ran for 300 million tokens across multiple sessions and model switches, and the problem never got solved. After going through that enough times, I just had to admit that this tool, for how I work, was not working. Not that it's bad, everyone had their preference. Some people love Codex, some people love claudecode. Hermes was just not the right fit for my local development style. Speaking of claudecode, I used it before too, with DeepSeek API on my MacBook Air. It was actually pretty good when I gave it full YOLO permissions. Just let it go. But without YOLO, it leans too far the other way, asking me for permission on every tiny step. So claudecode and Hermes are basically opposite extremes, and neither quite lands where I need. So I did some research. I used DeepSeek, and I wanted to know what agent worked best with it. Think of it this way. The model is the car, but the agent is the driver. Same car, different drivers, completely different experience. And you have to drive each car the way it was meant to be driven. The rear-wheel drive handles different from front-wheel drive, stick shift different from automatic. If you use the wrong technique, the whole thing feels terrible. And for me, Hermes desktop with DeepSeek felt like driving a sports car in the desert. What I found was Reasonix. If DeepSeek is the AE86, the Reasonix is Fujiwara Takumi, the only guy who really knows how to drift that car. Reasonix is built entirely around DeepSeek V4's cache hit feature. Here's how that works. It writes the beginning of your input to a disk. If your next input starts with the exact same content, it does not recompute that part. As the result, you get a massive discount. But most of agents constantly modify the beginning of their prompts, adding timestamps, file paths, system messages that change every turn. Every change kills the cache hit. Some agents are even worse. Claudecode reportedly updated itself after DeepSeek came out to deliberately randomize the prompt prefix so the cache never hits. I don't know if this is true for every version. Mine works fine though. The number on my own usage tells the story clearly. During day-to-day dev work, cache hit rate stays high. But the moment I threw something like translation, subtitle processing, Damak translation, cache hit rate drops straight to the basement. Reasonix does one simple thing differently. It never changes the beginning. It only appends to the end. That means the cache rate keeps hitting. and the cost stays low. When I downloaded Reasonix, the first task I gave it was something that had been stuck in Hermes desktop for days, something that made me want to stop using it entirely. I summarized the problem, handed it to Reasonix, and solved it on the first try, which honestly scared me a little, because I had developed this reflex where I do not trust what the AI says anymore. So I manually verified everything, and it was real. It actually worked. The way Reasonix achieves this is through a planner and executor split. You set it up so DeepSeek V4 Pro does the planning and DeepSeek Flash does the execution. That is not revolutionary. Claudecode and others can do something similar. But Reasonix does it in a way that creates the genuinely hilarious dynamic between the two. Here's what happens. Pro and Flash does not share context. Flash knows all the execution details because it just ran everything. Pro does not always have the full picture. So Pro makes a plan based on what it knows, and Flash sometimes just overrules it because Flash has seen the actual results. So you get conversation that goes like this. You're basically watching two AIs argue with each other in real time, left brain fighting the right brain. But here's the thing, even though Pro does not have all the execution context, I actually think that's a feature, not a bug, because Pro stays clean. It approaches every decision from first principle without being polluted by the mistakes and the ends the executor ran into. When Pro needs real data, it calls the executor and checks. So the separation actually protects the planner's clarity. Which brings me to something I keep coming back to. You have to develop a habit of saving intermediate state. Every state your agent takes, every intermediate output it produces, save it. That way, when something goes wrong downstream, you can trace back and see exactly where it broke. Without those breadcrumbs, you're just guessing. In 3 days of using Reasonix, my efficiency really went up. Way less friction. None of that fighting with Hermes feeling anymore. My auto-editing pipeline, which had been stuck for ages, reached about 90% usability. The entire session was about 500 million tokens and ran for around 5 hours, cost about only $3. And the crazy part is, I did everything in one single session. No new windows, no context rebuilds, no warm-up cost every time. The longer the session went, the higher the cache hit rate climbed. And this is the real comparison. With Hermes, I had one day where I burnt over 300 million tokens and spent over $3 stuck in a loop solving nothing. With Reasonix, I ran almost 500 million tokens across an entire session of real work and spent less than $3. That's more work for less money. And don't forget, the Pro model is running more frequently too. So why is it so much cheaper? I think this is why. The cache hit rate on new projects starts lower, but it warms up fast. Once you have been in a session for a while, small edits hits 99.9% cache hit rate. Some turns even hit 100%. It's basically free. And don't get me wrong, as much as I like how Reasonix works, it is not perfect. For one thing, the Pro trigger frequency is way too high. In my opinion, it calls for Pro for simple stuff that really does not need it, just short, trivial tasks, and it still spins up the whole planning pipeline. That drives the cost up more than it should. Then there are a few desktop bugs that I hit. Switching between sessions is not stable. Sometimes when I jump to another project and come back, it just freezes. And sometimes even simple bash commands would harm. I had one bash command stuck for 10 minutes. The stop button didn't work. I had to force queue and start over. When that happens, the cache hit rate on the next turn drops to about 65%, so it hurts. There is also an infinite loop bug where it just keeps saying, there is nothing to do, over and over. But it kept doing that nothing. If I had left it overnight, I have no idea how long it would have gone. By the way, most of those data screenshots you saw with DeepSeek API usage analytics, those were from a Chrome extension I built in about an hour for under $1 using Reasonix with DeepSeek V4. So at this point, Reasonix has become my main local development agent. The thing I love about it is that it feels controllable. It solves problems with a clean, targeted approach instead of just brute forcing with more tokens. The separated Pro and Flash context, the brain hemisphere fighting each other, it is genuinely fun to watch. But it's still early and there are the desktop bugs. If you mainly use DeepSeek, I would strongly recommend giving it a try. If you have experience with other combinations, I would love to hear what works for you. If you get something out of this, leave a like and subscribe. If not, watch another one. See you next time.